Okay, now we're going to look at StudySync. StudySync is the program that we'll be using for our English classroom for most of our reading and writing and things having to do with English language arts. So as you can see here on the screen, this is for grade 7. This is called StudySync, and I've got it clicked over here on grade 7. StudySync goes from 6th grade to 12th grade, but we're just going to look at the 7th grade one. The year comes in 4 units. Unit 1 is for the first quarter, Unit 2 is the second quarter, Unit 3 is the third quarter, and Unit 4 is the fourth quarter. Each quarter has 2 different elements in it. For regular English classes, including some ELD at a higher level, we have something that looks like this. There's a lot of stuff that we study in a regular course like that. And in the instructional unit, where the things that we're going to be studying in this class, we start with the big idea for the unit, and then there's Body of Boy, Other Side of the Sky, the story of the Wandering Angus, The Hobbit, Call of the Klondike, King of Maisie May, and on and on and on. These are all things to read. You will also see things sometimes highlighted like Call of the Wild or The Hobbit, because they also are found under the novel study. See, there's The Hobbit, there's Call of the Wild, and there's also another one, The Jungle Book. We can look at these and actually study a whole book where there's the teacher edition, there's a student edition of what the course looks like. So there's a key passage from chapters 1 to 3. There's a TV thing to look at that goes along with that. There's vocabulary in that section. And then there's close read questions. But we're not going to be working on that right now. That's how the novel study works. In fact, we're not even going to look at the regular ELA, ELD units. We're going to look at designated ELD units to start with. In Unit 1, we again have some stuff to cover, but notice that it's not as many things that we're looking at. Feature genres, we'll talk about that later. Assignment types, standard focus, key reading skills, key writing skills, and oral skills, which are all things that we have to do with ELD. In our instructional path, you see that we have the big idea, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories instead of a whole lot of them. When we look at them, what you'll see sometimes when something's assigned is, like in the introduction, there's 2 things to work on. There's the introduction, says what we're doing, and then there's a blast where I have you write a very short response to a question. We'll be doing blasts on and off through this StudySync set of units, but that's kind of what that looks like. Then when we get into one of the stories, like here's Ready for Marcos, in that story, we have what's called a first read. So we're going to read the story, and there's an assignment that goes with it. Later on, we're going to reread the story. This is reread 1, and we're going to look at other things. Then here's a reread 2, and we're going to look at things even more closely in that same story. So we're going to read that story 3 times, and we're going to work on 2 skills inside those stories. First skill is called story elements. The second skill is called referring words, and that takes care of that. When we look at a story, we're going to see assignments that look a little bit like what we're going to see here. So this particular one on the first read comes in 3 parts. There's a vocabulary part, there's a read part, and there's a using language part. So let's take a look at vocabulary. Most of our vocabulary will work like this. Here are a handful of terms: vivacious, covertly, pursue, justify, subtle, and turmoil. Those are all words that will show up in that story. And here are the forms of the words. Vivacious is an adjective, and an adjective describes something. and covertly is an adverb, pursue is a verb, justify is a verb, so forth. So what you're supposed to do is then find the definition of the word, like the word vivacious. One of these things is the definition of it. So um, if it's energetic, happy, lively, you grab it and you will drag it over to there. And that's the answer you would select. So vivacious is an adjective, means energetic, happy, lively. And then we try to find a picture that looks like something that's energetic, happy, lively. And in this particular one, we see that this dog, this puppy running, looks vivacious. And we would drop the picture in there to illustrate that that's what vivacious means. And that's how we would do those things. So we would do that for each one of them. And when we're all done, down here it says save. And when you save it, it goes in for grading. So after you do all these things, you put them in, your definitions, the pictures that illustrate it, hit save, and it goes in for grading. When we go to the next section, it's reading. So we want to read. Here's the story. It's not a huge story. That's all there is right there. But you'll notice that along with the story are words like pursue is highlighted, justify is highlighted, subtle, turmoil. All those words that we saw in the vocabulary are here in the story, and we can see them and how they're actually being used. If you don't actually want to read the story yourself, you can go to audio. Here's audio, and if you click on it, it will read it to you. So it'll read it to you and you follow along. One of the other things you can do is annotating. We'll talk about that later on. But then the third thing here is called numbers. And once in a while, when you're asked questions, it'll say in paragraph 1 or paragraph 2. If you click on numbers, you can see that the paragraphs are now numbered so that we can see what they are. So if those questions come up, you know where to find paragraph 1, 2, 3, whatever. The third area is called using language. And when we click on it, we come up with some questions, and they're multiple choice questions. And you would pick an answer for, like, question 1, later as dinner time approached, Monica began to dread the upcoming discussion with her parents. She could hear them in the kitchen. So she is underlined, and the instructions say, read each sentence. For numbers 1 and 2, look at the underlined pronoun. Use the clues in the sentence to determine what the pronoun refers to. So she could hear them. So who is she? Is it her parents or Monica? We would maybe say Monica and click on that, and that we've answered that one. And we go on through those. Sometimes we want to take a look at what's going on in the story while we're looking at the questions. And if we go up here to where it says split screen and click on it, then on the left-hand side, we'll actually see the story, and we can even number it so that there's all the paragraphs. And then here's our questions over here on the right, and we answer the questions, and it might say in paragraph 5 something that's happening, whatever. Sometimes questions will show up like that, and you put your answers here. Once you've finished all your answers, again, you're going to hit down at the bottom where my picture is right now. You're going to hit save, and again, that's set up for grading. And then once it's all graded, that will show up in Google Classroom and in Aries, your final grades for that particular assignment. That's how these assignments work in StudySync. Some of you, one I just showed you right now is expanding. Those are for ELD2 students. There's another one called emerging. Those are for ELD1 students. And you're both in the English classroom. So Those of you that are ELD 1, I will probably be assigning mostly emerging for these questions and assignments. And those of you that are in ELD 2, I'll be giving you expanding. And then we'll just split out the grades as we go through each of these things. As you can see here, we have 5 different assignments for this particular story with called Ready for Marcos. And The Hobbit has a bunch, and each one of these does. We also will have, we'll start with the big idea so we understand, and we also will get to the end of the unit assessment to find out if we are on target with things. And so we have an end of unit assessment. It's actually a test. So I'll be giving that to you when we finish unit 1, which is called In Pursuit. That's how that works. So once again, we're in 7th grade. 7th grade comes in 4 units. We're in the first quarter, so we're going to be looking at Unit 1, which is called In Pursuit. We're going to be looking at our designated ELD units. Under the instructional path, we'll start with the big idea. There's some assignments there, and we'll go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories, and each of them has 4 or 5 different assignments. That's how we're going to be doing StudySync.